let's get this started. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Welcome to InRhythm Lightning Talks. I'm your host, Parag Katkar. I'm the head of consulting practices at InRhythm. InRhythm is a modern product and technology consulting firm, and we have a lot of exciting content lined up for you. Our Lightning Talks are hosted every Thursday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time. And each week, one of the practice area consultants shares their knowledge on the latest trends in the industry. So this week, James Putman, who is a senior DevOps engineer with us, is going to give an overview of DORA Metrics. DORA Metrics, it's a great way to measure and provide data on the efficiency, effectiveness, and reliability of your software development as well as deployment practices. And you can really identify areas for improvement for your engineering team. So I'm really curious to learn what he has in store for us. So without further ado, let's get it started, James.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Parag. So yeah, like Parag said, I am James Putman here for another Thursday Lightning Talk for InRhythm. And today we're going to be talking about DORA Metrics. Quick overview of our talk today. DORA, what is it? We'll talk a little bit about the metrics themselves. Why should you care? We'll also provide some examples, some links, and some questions. All right, so DORA. So DORA is the DevOps Research and Assessment. So that's what DORA stands for. And it was really kind of started back in 2014. There were a group of researchers that partnered with Puppet. And you see right here, we have Dr. Nicole Forsgren, Gene Kim, and Jez Humble. And at that time, they had the annual State of DevOps report. And when partnering with Puppet, they got together, kind of talked about it, and wanted a better way of being able to analyze the efficiency of these companies. They had collected a lot of data prior to this and basically used this data to kind of drill down and figure out what makes these high performing teams different than these lower performing teams in these organizations, and how can we kind of come up with like almost a scientific method to be able to reproduce this within different companies. And they were able to achieve this by coming up with a lot of different metrics. Yeah, so they benchmark team capabilities against industry data, from different companies. They help companies to identify areas to focus on, and they achieve so much success that over the years, they started partnering with Google on different things. And because of that partnership and that close collaboration, they ended up being acquired by Google in 2018. And so talked a little bit about what DORA is, how did it start? Let's talk about some of the metrics themselves. So the DORA metrics, we can kind of break these down into two main categories, measuring the velocity and measuring stability of the organization. So for the velocity portion, we have deployment frequency. So how often are you, deploying your code? So back in the day, whenever we were doing waterfall development, how often would code be pushed out? Maybe like a couple times a year, and over the years, as we've got more into agile, making things more efficient. The deployment process, has gotten a lot faster. We're able to get releases out a lot quicker. But when compared to some of these high performing teams that make releases like every day or a couple times a day, that's what we'll talk about a little bit. Change lead time, how long does it take for, a committed code change to make it into production? Change failure rate, time to restore service, reliability. These are things we'll dive in here in just a second. All right, deployment frequency. So kind of like what I was talking prior, this really measures how many successful deployments do you have over a given period of time. So this can be daily, this can be over a week, this can be over a month, really depends on what your team is set up to do. So it can be used to understand deployment success rate as well as response to customer requests. So say a customer, wants a new feature out, every so often, can you comfortably as a company provide that to your customer? How often can you release new updates to production for that customer? This basically increases that feedback loop, because the faster you're able to get that product into the customer's hands, the faster they're able to tinker around with it, find any issues, come back with recommendations, and then your team can take that feedback, start working on new improvements, and just keep that cycle going. Down here at the bottom, we have a quick example. Say we have 10 deployments a month. In that month, say we have 31 days, 30 days, breaks down to 0.32 deployments a day. And so the higher that score, better you're going to be. Next one for velocity is change lead time. So not to be confused with lead time. So lead time would kind of be like, in your project tracking program, say Jira or something, lead time would be, when that ticket is open to when that ticket is closed. So this is different than that. And this is more about commits. So how long does it take for whenever a developer makes a commit, opens a PR, gets that committed code merged, and how long does it take from that point to it making to production? And so the faster or the shorter time that you have between that, definitely increase performance. And of course, over time, your change lead time should decrease. So yeah, that is kind of in a nutshell what the change lead time breaks down to. But now we've talked about the velocity aspect of DORA metrics, we can move on to the stability level of DORA metrics. And first one would be change failure rate. And so this would kind of be like, how often do the changes that you incorporate into your code base, how often does that break things in a nutshell? Or how often does it, require somebody to go in and fix production? This is really helpful in being able to determine the kind of the level of quality that you're shipping. You could also point out areas that need to be improved upon. So if you're shipping out bad code, you could look into maybe the development process itself. Testing could be, some ways to kind of improve this change failure rate. But this is usually calculated by the number of deployments with incidents over the number of deployments themselves. So 5 faulty deployments, say you have within a given month, say you have 10 deployments, but 5 of those resulted in issues that need to be resolved within production. That would bring us to like a 0.5 failure rate. But higher score could indicate issues with development process or testing, like I was mentioning. But again, with this one, you want to have lower score. So yeah, the less faulty deployments over the grand deployments, the better. The next part under the stability section is time to restore service. So how long does it take for an organization to recover from a failure in production? So this would be like, say that an issue crept into production and it just took all services down. How long is it going to take you to get back up and running? This can kind of go into, your SRE stuff, like what's your software level, agreement, SLAs and stuff. So whenever you have big clients, you want to make sure that your availability is like 0.99999, and so this also helps to achieve that agreement that you make with your clients as well. But this can also allow organizations to experiment. And so say that your time to restore service is really short, it takes you a couple minutes to get things back up and running. This could allow you to do a lot more experimenting, prototyping, testing new things out, because you're able to recover a lot quicker. And finally, we come to stability. So stability, there were 4 key DORA metrics that were outlined originally by the DORA team. But I think it was last year they added reliability. So now there are 5. I think the 4 core, and then this one, I don't know if they're trying to make this a core one now or if it is part of the core. But it's a new addition to DORA metrics, and it's more of an overall operational performance. overview. So kind of dipping in the SRE a little bit, but measurement can vary based on your service level indicators, service level objectives. So depending on what you agree with, on the client that you're working with, it will differ, on how you want to measure that reliability for the client. And then this is kind of a chart that I was able to pull up during my research, and this kind of goes over low performing teams, medium performing teams, high and elite, and how these metrics kind of break down and what you want to try and shoot for if you're going for, say, an elite team. Deployment frequency, places like Pinterest, Spotify, they're making a bunch of deployments a day to production, which is crazy to think about, as someone, from a low performing team, like once per 6 months. It sounds like some waterfall stuff. But, if you want to get on par with the elite teams, you want to try and make sure that you can get those deployments as fast as possible out the door. Lead time for changes, less than an hour. So how long does it take for that change to get from committed code out to production? Time to restore service, less than an hour. I mean, that would be pretty nice, if you're able to recover from any kind of production level incident with less than an hour. And change failure rate, 0 to 15% is what we're looking at for elite teams. And so, why should we care about this? Well, I mean, you want to be able to make sure that you have a high performing team to support your company, to promote your product. Because anytime that you allow bugs, issues to get out into the field, I mean, you can take a look at Microsoft with some of the issues they've been having recently. It kind of puts a damper, a tarnish on the reputation of the organization. So the better you're able to align yourself with these DORA metrics, shoot for that elite level of development process, overall is going to lead to, a better image for the company, but, your team's going to benefit from it as well. So overall, this is what we should be looking for. Some other helpful tips. So aside from the DORA metrics themselves, there are some other things you can do to improve the overall process. In addition to helping some of the DORA metrics, small but powerful PRs. A lot of times you'll get a PR that's like 1,000 changes and it takes, 5 or 6 people to review it. It's sitting there for a couple of days. That's not what you want. You want to try and shoot for like smaller PRs, maybe limit the number of changes that PR has so that you can kind of restrict, or put restrictions on those PRs so that, as soon as that PR hits, somebody can review it, somebody knows what they're looking for, they can get that PR merged, move on to the next thing. And this would improve change lead time and failure rate because you're able to, it's a lot easier to review a smaller PR. It's a lot faster to test it. And it's just a lot less overhead in your brain trying to look through all this stuff and figure out what's going on. And then you can get back to focusing on your stuff. Strive for daily deployments, like we were talking about earlier. A lot of these elite teams are deploying multiple times a day. So that's definitely something that should be, people should be trying to achieve. And low rework rates. And so this is different than refactoring. So refactoring is something that is almost a given. I mean, you start out some projects with the intention of doing one thing, you get like a couple months, maybe a year down the road, and you revisit it and you're like, you know what, this was good at that time, but now we've learned some new things. Let's go back and refactor it. Let's improve it, make it better. Now, reworking would be kind of like poorly implemented code that shouldn't really been there in the first place. And so then you got to go back and rework it, if there's a bug or some kind of issue that crept in, or just due to lazy coding, not really knowing what you're doing, it could cause issues. So definitely want to try and shoot for low rework rates, which is different than refactoring. Factoring good, rework bad. And so in conclusion, DORA was created to improve the software development lifecycle using data and defined processes. 5 metrics in all, if you're including reliability, and high-performing elite teams follow these metrics. And I've also included some useful links. The first one here is a Medium article that was actually written by Jez Humble, one of the members that outlined DORA metrics and started the whole process. And it was a really good read if you guys have time to check it out. The main DORA page, every year they come out with with an annual DevOps report. And this is where you can find that information. 2023 report hasn't come out yet. They just completed the survey, so be on the lookout for that. But there is the 2022 DevOps report that is really nice, has some good information, and some additional metrics down there at the bottom that I talked about towards the end of this presentation, in addition to the DORA metrics.
Thanks, James.
Thank you all
Amazing.
very much.
Really informative. Thank you so much. Excellent job. And as a reminder to you all, we do these talks every Thursday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern time. And next week, Minhazur Rahman, who is a senior Android engineer with us, is going to give us an overview of Jetpack Compose navigation. The navigation components help you navigate between composable while taking advantage of the navigation components, infrastructure, and features. So I'm really looking forward to the talk next week. Make sure you mark your calendar for that. And thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you guys next week.